And we're doing this for like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
That sounds about right. Yeah. That's all right. We're letting people file in. This is the show, the backstage. Yeah, this is the banter.
Oh, gee, this is live. Nobody told me that.
It's live. Yeah, this is this is like the parts on Larry Sanders. Yeah. Like when Larry Sanders is in the office, and in a second it'll be like when the camera's on and they're out there on the talk show. But right now it's backstage. But don't worry, we're going to start any second now. Welcome to a special collaboration, a crossover, if you will. I'm Christian Blatt of the Bladtcast, and with me is Nick Clement. Nick, how are you today?
Good. How you guys doing?
And my pal Bill Narducci, and we're very excited to be getting a conversation with Daniel Waters. It was easy for me to say, Daniel. I was like, I know it's Daniel Waters, but my mouth wanted to say Daniel Walters. I don't know who that is, but Daniel Waters. And Daniel, you have a lot of great things you could talk about in your career, but we've assembled you today for one very specific reason, because we were recently talking about The Adventures of Ford Fairlaine, which, interestingly, that conversation really started because Bill was out here in LA, and in my 1998 Lexus, I had in the car the cassette soundtrack. So we were listening to it, and then that's basically what started this ball rolling. But welcome to Daniel, Nick, Bill. I'm Christian, and everybody watching along.
Well, I loved you getting my name slightly wrong, because it reminded me that when the movie came out, Andrew Dice Clay said, I love the writer of this movie. His name is Bobby Rivers. And when the reviews started coming in, I was like, yeah, Bobby Rivers. That's who wrote
it. Yeah. So Dice accidentally Alan Smithied you, and you thanked him for it. So
like, don't look at me. Look at Bobby Rivers.
Before we started, you mentioned, I guess, sort of going from the appreciation of Heathers, and this was the next script you did. Is that accurate?
The very next script.
Oh, wow.
It took me 25 years to write Heathers, but then I had a couple months to do my next one. But yeah, Heathers was a great script, and before Around Town, it's like no one was going to make the movie, but I still got a lot of meetings off it, and nothing interested me. And then Joel Silver called, and like, okay, all of a sudden then the movie got made, and I wanted to work with Joel Silver more than I wanted to work with maybe a more illustrious producer.
And was this always envisioned as a vehicle for Andrew Dice Clay, or was it more like, we want to do this movie, and does that come later? Does Dice come later?
Well, Dice was in place when I came aboard. Okay. And I didn't really know who he was. They flew me out to New Jersey in the middle of the night. I didn't have a credit card. They didn't have my reservation. I was sleeping on a couch in the lobby. It was a long, horrible process. I had to give them all my money as a deposit. Then I got a room. I had no money. I had no food. I'm waiting for Andrew Dice Clay's phone call. I watched Empire of the Sun and really bonded with Christian Bale, starving. And also, I got faxed the review for Heathers from the Sundance Film Fest. Was the very first review I ever got, and it was the greatest rave of all time. So I just sat there reading my fax and my review for 3 hours until he finally called. But then I went and I met Andrew, and I saw him in the club. This is the great thing. In a club, he's fantastic. The problem with the movie is he went from playing clubs to playing stadiums, and he became too much of a thing. But we can get into that. But I had an immediate vibe on the movie. I mean, there was an existing script about a rock and roll detective based on a series of comics by Rex Weiner. But Andrew Dice Clay, I had a vision of, like, he was such a parody of machismo, a parody of a film noir detective, that I wanted to do like kind of a Inspector Clouseau type movie. And so he was just a character, so it was great. So I had a lot of fun with it.
Oh, wow.
But then he became too popular.
Yeah, and one of the things that I was reminded of in sort of doing some research on this is they felt like this needed to come out in July of 1990, whereas it was originally going to come out in May. And I think if it could have come out that weekend that he hosted SNL, and there were all of this media coverage of Nora Dunn wouldn't do the show, and they made fun of it on the show. I remember I was 14, but I still remember it very well. That look, I don't know that ultimately it becomes huge, but it would have had a much better chance, don't you think, Daniel?
Christian, it's all I talk about now. I can even do this without alcohol. I do it much better with alcohol, my bitching, but we were supposed to come out against Bird on a Wire and Cadillac Man.
Oh,
two movies that will never even be on that show, The Ejectables. I mean, it's just terrible movies. And we could have snuck in there and just beat them up. But they thought we needed to pause to build up awareness. And that building up awareness process is what killed us. Like that 2 months between May and July is when, like I said, he went from playing clubs to playing stadiums, and it became too much of the wrong kind of icon. And if I could have just had it back then, we would have snuck in there. We would be a little terrorist act. But now, and then we had a great ad campaign, kind of hyping his controversy. But then by the time we got to July, they didn't want to get into the controversy. They wanted to keep it in. The poster became like Kojak was a wimp. Kojak references. Who the fuck knows what Kojak is? It's ridiculous. It's just the movie was so dead, and the movie was like, and it gave it extra 2 months for people to get their knives out. All right, this isn't the greatest line in the movie. It's not a very funny line, but there's a line where Morris Day is about to be killed, and he goes, with friends like you, who needs enemas? Not the greatest line in the world, but slightly humorous.
yeah.
For some reason, people wanted to hate the movie so much. Siskel and Ebert. They're like, Roger Ebert's like, there's a line where somebody says, with friends like you, who needs enemies? How original. Village Voice. The script is so unoriginal. There's a line, with friends like you, who needs enemies? It's enemas. I'm screaming at the TV screen. It's enemas. It's enemas. That's how they.
I don't know about Nick and Bill, but the first time I saw it, I knew it was Who Needs Enemas, and I laughed in the theater that I saw it in. People laughed, but I guess
it was dead silence.
I remember I saw the trailer before Nuns on the Run in the Village, and all of a sudden when they said, and Wayne Newton, and then it goes, that's right, Wayne Newton, right. The audience goes crazy. And this is in the Village.
Oh God, you're reminding me of this is a PTSD show. Okay,
the trailer.
My script was so. I'm not going to keep bragging about the script, but it was pretty good. David Bowie wanted to play that role. David Bowie. We flew to New York. Me, Rennie, and Joel go to a hotel room and talk to David Bowie to play Julian Grendel to play the villain. And then everything went wrong. Then suddenly I go from Bowie to Newton. From Bowie to Newton, that's going to be a chapter of my biography.
David Bowie does Into the Night, but then he doesn't do Adventures of Fort Fairlane. Where's the justice in the world?
Oh, he's so good in Into the Night.
So, and obviously Daniel, you are talking to three people who enjoy this movie. I would go so far as to say I love this movie, and look, it came out when I was 14, like I said, so it definitely happened at the right time. But I loved the sense of humor, the sensibility, and the soundtrack. There's a reason I have the cassette in the car, 35 years later. But it was interesting because I rewatched it just within the last month or so for the Ejectables, and I expected, this is going to be a painfully dated, out of touch movie that I'll still enjoy. And apart from one word that we don't really use anymore, a slur that starts with the letter F, there isn't anything that I would take out of this movie today. And I just thought it was going to be, Dice's act. You can certainly make that case for it. But I'm like, this movie still works in a really fun way where it's like, hey, remember 1990?
Like pretty funny. Sorry, I was just looking at the trailer. And I was laughing.
Yeah. That was the
Exactly.
trailer I saw.
That's the one where they say, that has the part Wayne Newton. Yeah.
Well, the
Yeah,
slur beginning with the letter F, unfortunately, is what Joel Silver kept talking about over and over in our meeting with David Bowie. He's like, we hired Alan Rickman from Die Hard, and he was just some F slur. And then and me and Rennie are like, David Bowie has walked on the wild side, my friend.
Yeah.
Probably not the best time to bring up the F.
I feel like the story about him and Mick Jagger was fairly well known by 1990, but the allegations, the rumors.
Indeed. And I saw the movie, I guess it's not that recently now, but there was a screening at the American Cinematheque out here in Los Angeles where me and Dice Clay did a Q&A afterwards, which was pretty funny. I mean, he was definitely our Chaz Palminteri, John Cusack, Bullets of Broadway dynamic was on full display. But I was shocked. I mean, it's certainly original. I mean, I never met a tone I didn't like. I mean, I think that was the problem with the movie, that people didn't know how. Problem with all my failing upwards montage of the early '90s of going from Ford Fairlane to Hudson Hawk to Batman Returns to Demolition Man, that none of these movies pick a tone, and which I think means they hold up more. They're more unique now. They're more beloved now. Certainly, Batman Returns and Demolition Man are actually considered pretty good now. And I think Ford Fairlane definitely has been given a reputation bath too. I mean, it's certainly nothing like it. And the funeral, and Rennie's direction is hilarious. It's like as I told Nick before in an interview, that it's as if Beverly Hills Cop was directed by Genghis Khan. It's just like this bombastic infusion of what should be just a comedy, but it makes it something so much more.
And it's so well shot by Oliver Wood. Like, it's so great to look at. And that's one of the things too, is that Rennie Harlan has that, especially in the 90s, he had that slick and gritty kind of cut from the Tony Scott aesthetic playbook of like that visual sheen, and everything had that really special anamorphic widescreen, look to it. And, there's
indeed, that's what gets me now. It's like, especially at that screening, was like, this movie's huge.
Yeah.
This movie looks like it's like you say, got that sheen that nobody bothers to do anymore.
No, I know. It's great. And it's funny. It's like Die Hard 2 was out right at the same time, I think, when Ford Fairlane came out in the theaters, or right around the same time or close to it.
Well, yeah, Rennie went right from Ford Fairlane to directing Die Hard 2, but Die Hard 2 came out, I think, a little before.
It came out July 2nd in 1990, and then Ford Fairlane's July 11th. I think thereabouts. So they're about like a week and a half apart. On the Rennie Harlan aspect of this, I know, Bill, you watched the director's commentary recently, but before I throw it to Bill for that, Adam Rant 1138 in the chat. Bowie, wow, imagine that filmography: Man Who Fell to Earth, The Linguini Incident, Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, The Hunger, Basquiat. I'll throw in Labyrinth, and then Adventures of Fort Fairlane. So thank you for that, Adam. But Bill, what were the takeaways? Because I've had this standard def DVD because I'm too good for Blu-ray.
No, it's not available on Blu-ray.
Okay. Well, and you can also see that I got it. Well, you can't see because of my screen, but I got it used at Amoeba for $7.99.
Yeah, it's available on Blu-ray.
But so you watched the director's commentary, Bill. What were the key takeaways? Is it just Rennie Harlan, or is there anybody else on it?
It's just Rennie Harlan.
Okay.
He talks. It talks.
My phone obviously wasn't working. Nobody called me.
I know, right? He talks about how at least 75% of the shots in the movie they wouldn't do now. That they would use a green screen, like when they use the DGA for the Gilbert Gottfried electrocution scene. They said that they would just use a green screen. They wouldn't shoot there. The koala bear they would just have wires and cut it out. The entire thing. And he seems like Mr. Comedy to me, man.
Bill, I don't know what
I can't. You brought up the Gilbert Gottfried scene. Okay, here, picture me. I thought I wrote a subversive script. Coming after Heather's, like, okay, I'm not blowing my career. I swear to God. First scene we shot was the Gilbert Gottfried scene. Come to the set. Gilbert Gottfried doesn't know any of his lines, and he starts ad-libbing, and he keeps seeing this. The one line he keeps remembering is something he came up with himself. He's like, "She was a pig, so I fucked her," and I'm like, "I've made a very big mistake. This is not the career pivot that I probably should have done."
And then that gave that Howard Stern auditioning for Rennie, and then Gilbert making fun of the movie probably gave the Stern Show 3 years of life. I mean, all they did was talk about like Howard hated Rennie, and then Gilbert made fun of the movie because he hated Dice. It was crazy. I mean, I think
thanks a lot, Gilbert.
I know.
Well, let's be honest. We all know
I was
about...
I was there for Howard Stern's audition too. I mean, it was. It was in a hotel room. It was so weird. He comes in. He's fantastic. He's so interesting, so great, so one. Then it's time to read the lines, and suddenly it's just like flop sweat and nervous, and just suddenly like it was. I felt bad for him. I wanted to shoot him in the back of the head and put him out of his misery. But yeah, he should have just came to the set and just did what he should do. Don't bother with my lines.
But Nick,
and look, Nick, I was just going to say that I think we all know enough about Gilbert to know that he doesn't show up on set to run his lines. He shows up on set to fill up a duffel bag with all the craft service. But Nick, I'm sorry, you were going to say something.
No, I was just going to say that there is a Blu-ray available. I just sent a link through your little thing there. There's a Blu-ray out there. I think
it's European.
But it says it's on all region disc or something.
Oh wow!
So just so you know,
let's ask an important question, Daniel. If people buy that Blu-ray, do you get a cut? Because if not, we'll stop talking about it right now.
Well, I'm waiting for the Criterion Collection.
There you go.
I think that's going to be my best bet.
I believe that's at the top of their list. It's actually the next film Criterion's going to get to, Daniel.
I would love to ask Dan a question, and I don't know if when Rennie got involved in the movie, right? And like obviously he was a very hot director at the time, coming off of hits and up for a lot of jobs. I'm just curious to know, like, was there anybody else attached to direct before him? Like, he doesn't strike you as like the immediate thought back in the day to do that kind of movie, I guess. But then again, why couldn't he? So I was just curious to know if there was anybody else that worked with.
It's funny. It's mystifying. Like you think they would have had at least a comedy director on the list. There was something weird in the air where Fox was desperate to work with Rennie Harlin, and so like when I got on board of the project, like, well, Rennie Harlin's number one on the directors list. I'm like, the director of Prison. Okay, he did. Yeah, I remember. Oh yeah, he did A Nightmare on Elm Street. I mean, it's like, and it was still way too early for my career to say, like, where's Jeff Canoe and Louis Teague on this list? Like, I just didn't have any power. So it's like I was going with the flow. And then when I met him, it was like he's such a big personality. And his favorite movie of all time. You tell me your favorite movie of all time, and I'll remember it forever. Rennie's favorite movie of all time is Robert Altman's The Long Goodbye. So I'm like, okay, we can work with this.
He said on the commentary that he was going to direct Alien 3, and that fell apart, and then Joel Silver came to him with this project.
It was weird. Fox and Joel were just like, this is the guy. And I'm like, no, I'm not gonna say that. I'm just like, it was weird how fait accompli it all was. Mm-hmm. Like both with Rennie and Josh. I'm like, okay, I guess this is the way Hollywood works.
If only he had made Cutthroat Island at this point, then everyone would know he's capable of comedy.
It said no one.
Exactly. Exactly. So obviously you show up on set and you're saying that first day is when you realize, were there times along the way through the process where you're like, all right, no, this seems like it's working? Is it one of those things that you feel like, putting it out earlier would have made a huge difference? And that
I still believe that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's just that I love Joel Silver, and I loved, like, I mean, when I got the call to even come in for a meeting, I was watching Lethal Weapon for the thousandth time at Christmas vacation with my mother. So it's just like, it felt it was in the stars. And he was such, for someone just starting out, he was such the cliche of the Hollywood producer. So the journey is the destination. I went along with the ride, and like, this is, and unfortunately we tried 3 times to make a great movie, but we despite kind of the failures of most of our films, that we did get along, and he has such a knowledge of movies. So, and he never met a tone he didn't like either. Like, I think he, like, you go back, I know Nick's a huge Bruckheimer fan, but I was never a Bruckheimer guy because he doesn't have the kind of sense of humor Joel Silver has. That Joel Silver has seen every kind of movie. And so it was like, I was there at the party, so it was like, I never thought like something was going wrong, which I should have. Definitely by the time I got to Hudson Hawk, I knew something was not right. But
what's Joel Silver's favorite movie?
Oh, you bastard.
Sorry. It's somebody on this show said you never forgot when it was somebody's favorite movie.
Oh my God, what was it? The Quiet Man, John Ford?
Okay. Yeah, there's you can't go wrong. Neither one of them had the wrong choice, but it's that's a very personal question, and whenever anybody asks me, I feel a lot of pressure to try and give a good answer.
Yeah, he just loved. I mean, I've learned a lot since then. Like, I mean, here's the thing: I took a script that was kind of a straight ahead Sid Field, point A, point B, point C bit, and kept injecting craziness to it, and which I like, but then we kind of lost the movie somewhere. Like this, we lost the plot. Unfortunately, all my movies, even Batman Returns, there's a plot. Like I'm not a big plot guy. Okay, I admit it. But this was especially weird, is that I kept trying to put like detective shit in the movie, and they kept cutting it out for the goofy stuff. And so we kept. It was a funny process where this, like, Joe would always go, put it in the warehouse scene, because there was a big warehouse scene where everything is explained, the plot is detailed. So it's like okay, I'm gonna set a seed here. No, just leave it for the warehouse scene. It's like, okay, the warehouse scene. All right, boy, this warehouse scene is getting a little thick now. And then there came a moment where the budget, they came to me and said, all right, we got to cut a scene from the script. Either it's going to be this scene where Andrew Dice Clay hides out in a sorority, or it's going to be the warehouse scene. I'm like, you can't cut the warehouse scene. The warehouse scene is the entire plot of the movie. And it's like, we're cutting the warehouse scene. And then we end up filming this sorority scene, which is ridiculous, with scantily clad girls. And of course, I'll never forget the filming of that scene, because I go there, Playboy Playmates and lingerie. It's just like a horny young screenwriter's dream. And in the kitchen is crammed all these Hollywood royalty who picked today to visit the Ford Fairlaine set. and Dan Heathers Waters meets John Hughes for the first time, sweating in a kitchen. The two of us just like ogling perverts, completely revealed. Like, hey, how about that teen genre? Oh yeah, we're a bunch of fucking perverts. So I remember.
Wow.
But that led to the cutting out the warehouse scene. Led to we have to put narration in the movie, and I think the narration was another point where before Andrew Dice Clay is an actor in a movie, and he's doing a great job. I love his performance. But then his popularity, like I always say, the movie lives by his talent and dies by his popularity, because he became too popular at that point. Again, he's moving from clubs to stadiums. So he had much more control of the narration than he did the filming of the rest of the film. And so I thought I wrote some pretty good narration. And some of it's still in there.
Yeah.
But there's a lot. I just remember one moment where Ananias Clay goes, I talk about him going to his office and like layer in some plot stuff. And he's like, and then he goes, I got a better line. And he goes, I worked at the crossroads of the world in Hollywood. I loved it because of the chicks, the big fat chicks. And it's just because it has him walking by some women on a exercise bike that are overweight, and I'm like, all right, that's a choice. All right, we got that one.
To circle back to the sorority house scene for a second, as I keep stressing, I was 14 when I saw this, so the idea that it wasn't in there and there would have been some warehouse scene is disappointing. And of course, what more fitting song than Billy Idol's "Cradle of Love" for that sequence in there from the Ford Fairlane soundtrack, which I'll show off. That I actually have the slit cut out of
That
the
is a
cassette.
very deep
So
cut, having that.
yeah.
He's a fan. He's a fan, Nick.
That's
I got
Yeah,
that.
look.
I don't know if I've ever said this before anywhere, but we're live. So I got to go on a couple dates with the girl from the Cradle of Love video, which was a high
Whoa.
Betsy Lynn George.
Whoa. That's amazing. I mean,
Yeah, those are the days. And me and Kari had such a chemistry, and God, I can't even talk about it. I realized I left a lot of things on the table. I was too shy.
So, but Daniel, when did you see the Capitol Records building is the warehouse scene where they explain the plot?
That's very funny you say that. Yes. It's like, oh yeah, there's a CD-ROM in the office in the Capitol Records building. Okay, we're gonna warehouse this bitch up. Like, it's just so perfunctory. And like I love them climbing down the thing, and I love them falling, and
My hair.
I love my hair.
So Daniel, how hard would it be on any level outside of an independent movie? How hard would it be to get a movie like this made now?
Well, I get asked that question a lot, unfortunately, which says something for my career. The thing is, I always say it was weird to make the movie then. Like, it's not. It's like a movie that doesn't pick its tone, that doesn't pick what it's supposed to be, is always tough. So I think it's always like a crazy accident. But I think definitely to get it made now you have to submit a PowerPoint presentation to do anything. I mean, can you imagine the freedom I was given on even Batman Returns, where like now to write a superhero movie, you have to go through a tribunal and do a urine test and do all this shit that I didn't have to do. Like, accidents could happen, and I don't think that's true now. Certainly on the deep independent things you can get away with shit, but that's the thing, that there's a plank missing. There's a couple levels that are missing now, and one of them is like the mid-budget drama, the mid-budget like movie that's just about a drama that's a story, but there's also like the movie that's not a big action movie, but a little action movie that's got its own personality. Like, it's hard to do those movies now, and it's sad.
Yeah.
So with him being a detective, I would assume that throughout the process prior to release, there was probably an expectation that you could do 2, 3, or even 4 of these movies. Was that something that was, obviously not after the release, but was that something that was kind of expected as part of the conversation? Yeah.
Yeah. I think that was like I thought I was making an Inspector Clouseau movie. They thought they were making Beverly's Cop, but either way, we thought we could do a series of them. And and he was so game. I mean, it was his Andrew Dice Clay. It was his first really starring role, and he was willing to do the character forever.
Oh man. I remember him talking on Stern's E! Show, and he said Barry Diller pulled the movie after the second weekend, that he hated him, and that was the big issue because it opened up, right? It opened up third, and it made like over $20 million. You know, it wasn't
didn't open great.
Yeah.
Let's be, yeah. I had a time with Barry Diller at a party where he was just like, "You're a very crude person, aren't you?" You know, because he was a Heathers fan, but he thought Heathers was pretty nasty too, and he's just like, "You've just got your own sensibility, don't you?" And I'm like, "Okay, this is a powerful man. He's insinuating something. I don't like it. I got to get out of here." So yeah, I don't think Barry Diller was a fan.
Yeah, well, if you read Easy Riding Raging Bulls, I don't think there's anything nice about him either.
Yeah, he was a lovely gentleman.
And I think that Daniel was a little bit more accurate. The opening was 6 million, and then the total box office is 21, according to Box Office Mojo.
That's
just because I feel
if that's 21 million, if that's $21 million domestic off a $6 million opening, that means it did almost 4 times its opening, which is still remarkable in some way, shape, or form, especially when you think about how movies are these days. I mean, it's just a bummer that you didn't have the opening. We had it done.
Yeah, it was
done a 4 times multiple on a $12 million opening or a $15 million opening.
I think a lot of people know more about box office now, but it was still it was a shock to me and Dice and everybody were like we thought, oh, it's going to build word of mouth, and I guess it did to a little extent, but it was still Saturday morning. It's dead. Goodbye. Gone.
What was a good? Sorry, go ahead, Daniel.
And of course, the funny thing is, I'm in New York on the set of Hudson Hawk, thinking, well, okay, Fort Fairlaine didn't do well, but I got a Hudson Hawk, baby. I got a Bruce Willis action movie. I'm coming back. Thank God I'm on this set. This is gonna be. You can't fuck with Hudson Hawk.
What were the, do you know what the studios, not that I expect you to know, but like, do you know what the studio's expectations were for opening weekend of Fort Fairlaine, or was there a number that...
Well, I think like everyone knew they made a mistake not opening in May, but they were high on the movie. My God, Joe Roth was high on the movie. Like we had great test screenings. We had great building awareness in May. Building awareness screenings where like they got it. The audience got it. Like it was something original, but they got it. And then, like I said, when NSK when they built awareness about them, it's suddenly like the haters got more vocal than the people who liked it. But they were definitely high on the movie for a little bit, and then it just became damage control. And by the time the movie came out, like I say, they're using Kojak, Columbo, Wimps. Like, who said Columbo wasn't even what is this ad campaign? Like, they're daring people to see the movie.
Yeah, I think Columbo it never really came off like he was trying to be a tough guy. I mean, the raincoat alone, yeah, and
all those Kojak fans back then, yeah.
And by way of comparison, just because the film came up, so Die Hard 2 opens with 21 million that weekend, so that's considered a big opening for 1990. That's just 2 weeks earlier. So, No, I'm just that's why I brought it up. But I mean, there's a great line that probably couldn't have possibly been in the script that you wrote, but there's, where he's like, yeah, look me up under banned from MTV. So like, if that goes in the trailer, you can kind of play off that
was, I think that was the narration part that we threw in.
Oh yeah, that makes sense that it would be narration, probably easier to add in there. So you said
He goes, I could have been a rock star if I wasn't banned from MTV. And the audience went crazy when I saw it. And
Really? My God, I want to be in your audience. My audience was.
they went nuts. They went nuts.
I heard a car slam in the parking lot after that line.
So you talked about doing a screening here in LA. I think you said it was at the Arrow or the Egyptian, one of those. So did you sit and watch the entire film with?
Yeah,
Dice?
and it was it couldn't have been a better screening. Sold out, audience just going crazy over everything, and it was just like and I was even loving it, and like I say, Dice and I, we have that Chaz Palminteri, John Cusack thing, but there's a little weirdness. There was a little weirdness, but everybody said, "I thought you guys had some tension between you." Like, no, we didn't. And then, well, the great thing is we hadn't spoken since the movie comes out. He just walks up to me before the screen and just like, "I'm gonna say we're working on a sequel together. Just go with it." Like, okay.
Yeah, that's.
Well, I know Michael Cera is a big fan. He was there, right, at that screening.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's a big fan of the movie.
I have it's funny. I get approached more about Ford Fairlane and Hudson Hawk nowadays than I do of my more traditionally liked movies, because people feel like I need to hear it, and they have this burning secret.
So the koala bear line at the end, did you come up with that?
That's all me, baby.
I love it.
Gary Arnold is Washington Post or the other one, Washington Times, one of them. He wrote a review of Ford Fairlane that was just, and Richard Schickel for Time Magazine also liked it, but Gary Arnold wrote a review. He said, "That's the greatest closing line since Some Like It Hot."
I agree.
I've told Bill this, but I have one friend that if he calls me, about 9 times out of 10, I'm still going to answer the phone, hit pay dirt with K-Dirt, because this movie was very important to us in our formative years, Daniel.
God love you. God love you.
By the way, another shout out from Adam Rant, because he's talking about the Cradle of Love video. So he wants to shout you out. That video had a very special place in my teenage years. You're a legend for that. But he also said that Arrow Video has to put out a 4K of Ford Fairlane, and you deserve a solo commentary.
I'll send Arrow a note. I've done some work for them. We'll see what the guy says. It's always a rights thing. You know, I send the guy emails all the time suggesting stuff, and it's always like, "Oh, we can't get this," or "Oh, we can't get that." And then one time I got lucky with them, but yeah, let me.
Now it's, since Disney owns Fox, it's just like Ford Fairlane. I mean, you'd think they want to get rid of it, like cut it out like a cancer.
Well, is the Disney ownership why it's not streaming? I mean, do you have any insight to that? I know the obviously 35-year-old movie, but Daniel, do you have any thoughts? Has anybody ever talked to you about it? Okay.
No one's ever talked to me about it. It's just like that. I mean, if anything's been proven, there's something for everyone. Even the worst movies got a fan, so everything should be out there.
Except Madam Web.
People poor Madam Web. People my age call it the Channel 9 syndrome, where when we were growing up, we had a Channel 9 that just showed garbage in every kind of movie, and you make discoveries there. And we feel like that the Channel 9 of our lives has been excised, and everything's too streamlined. And like, again, if there's a theme for these movies, is let them breathe. Let somebody accidentally discover them. Unfortunately, I've used the Island of the Misfit Toys from Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer as a metaphor for most of my career, unfortunately. But a squirt gun that shoots peanut butter, that's kind of the movies I make. So there should be an Island of Misfit Toys streaming service.
But Daniel, peanut butter is delicious, so who cares if it comes out of a gun? Nick, you seem to maybe have some thoughts on why people might not be able to see this movie so readily. What do you think it takes for a movie that?
I can only assume that it's just the laziness on the part of Disney and, you know, their lack of desires. And I think it's even with bigger movies, I just think that there's just no real reason for them to step up to mass produce Blu-rays when everybody's gotten conditioned to do the streaming thing, which is a shame, because, you know, there are certainly people out there who would love to have that disc. And, you know, like Daniel said, there's something for everybody out there. And they've got a million boutique labels that put out the most obscure films and they sell out in like a minute, you know? So it's probably just corporate laziness and paperwork and lawyer shit that people don't want to do.
Yeah, I always have. A lot of times I have people come up to me and they say like, "Heathers is one of my 2 favorite movies of all time," and I always ask them, "Well, what's the other one?" And they say something like Shag with Phoebe Cates. Like what? Like it's never The Godfather. It's always like some obscure one.
That's hard to find.
So, you know, and by the way, Daniel, don't be surprised if somewhere in the near future you get an invite to another similar conversation like this geared towards Hudson Hawk. But you talked about Hudson Hawk as sort of the next thing after this. Is Batman Returns the next one after Hudson Hawk, or is there something in between?
So no, I said,
and I know Wikipedia could tell me that, but I figured I'd ask you.
My 90s is jumping from one burning ship to the other one. Like, you know, it's like if there's one rule of Hollywood, always be working on your next movie before your previous movie comes out. So like I was very successful in the, I mean, unfortunately, like it or hate it, the first 5 scripts I ever wrote were all made into movies back to back, year to year.
Wow.
After Demolition Man, I said, okay, my next movie is going to be a masterpiece. And I'm not going to just do a rewrite. And then, of course, and I was like, it's my way or the highway. And of course, I spent like 15 years on the highway. But I spent most of the late 90s working on one project, a script called The Model Daughter at Sony. And it's just like I realized, like, well, like Heathers is winning the lottery. Like these original scripts don't get made as much. And so, like by taking and it's not like people were asking me to, like I say, Demolition Man and even Batman Returns didn't get the love that they get now. So it's just like, maybe this Dan Waters doesn't belong doing this stuff. Like, you know, because I'm like the taste of green pepper. You put a little bit of green pepper in, and then all of a sudden the whole fucking thing tastes like green pepper. So it's like, if you like green pepper, that's good. But like a lot of people just want meat lovers pizza.
Yeah, I would be one of those. You know, mention Wikipedia at risk of throwing in the fact that it might be inaccurate, but did you write the first draft of what would become the Catwoman script?
Oh yes, I did write a first draft of Catwoman, which wasn't supposed to go on the internet. You're not supposed to go on the internet. I was going to do a better second draft, but it's crazy. I mean, the thing is, Tim. I mean, if you want to go down to Batman Catwoman alley for a second, it's like,
sure,
like Warner Brothers, like they could care less about me and Batman, but they did like Catwoman, and everybody agreed Catwoman's good. So, but Tim was like Tim and I get together. I can finally make a great Batman movie, but not having to use Batman. And I had this elaborate, like, big budget thing that was kind of a parody of superhero movies. I thought I would say, to pat myself on the back, was the Boys before it was The Boys, in that the villains were superheroes and Catwoman was just a woman trying to struggle to get by, and she has to bring up Catwoman again to defeat these superheroes. I had a lot of fun. But Tim wanted to make a $15 million movie, black and white, of like the original Cat People and Curse of the Cat People, of just her living in a small town. And so we would have these conversations where I'd say something, and he'd say something completely different, and then we say something completely different, and yet we think we're having a conversation. By the time I had a draft come out, it was just like he didn't want to do anything Catwoman anymore. He certainly didn't want to do my vision of Catwoman, so the project kind of died.
Oh, wow.
So it's not to be confused with the Halle Berry Catwoman. That's a very different story.
That is a very different story. I got one day I heard a beep 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 in my front lawn, and a dump truck, delivered 38 scripts, and it was 38 scripts for Catwoman. I was the first name. I was the first script, and the 38th script was co-written by my friend John Mercado. And let's just say it was the Chinese telephone game where you whisper in somebody's ear, and like by the time my script got to the 38th year, there was nothing left. And like they asked me if I want to arbitrate, and I go, God no, I'll sue you if you put my name on it.
Yeah, I don't want to out the screenwriter, but somebody told me once that the only thing that remained from a script that they wrote were the character names, and it was a script of something that got made. But again, Adam, so active in the chat, just because we were talking about Batman Returns, it is a little wild to think about the fact that there was a Happy Meal campaign for Batman Returns. Yeah, man, the 90s were definitely a crazy time. I think that's really the takeaway. And obviously, Daniel, your films that we're talking about maybe weren't necessarily beloved in the 90s, but those of us from the 90s, I think have very fond things to say.
My brother and I have different philosophies about movie. He made a great movie, Freaky Friday, also shot by Oliver Wood. I made Heathers. He means Mean Girls. Nobody doesn't like Mean Girls. But like, I like a party. If everyone's having a good time, you did something wrong. To me, when 40% don't like what you're doing, that means the other 60 are really going to like it, and they're going to like it because 40% don't like it, or maybe it's 40-60 is the better. But
yeah,
I'm just like, when you're surrounded by people who don't get it and you love it, it's a special kind of affection it creates, and that's definitely where I live.
Well, I'll give Nick. Go ahead, Nick. Sorry.
No, and I've said this before because I've had a chance. I've had the honor of talking to Dan a bunch of times, and I was 10 years old in 1990, so all of Daniel's movies, they came out when I was watching everything on HBO and Showtime in my childhood home, and it was like those were the movies one after another after another, and I didn't know anybody's name back then. Obviously I wasn't paying attention to credits, but it's like in retrospect, his authorial pen, his screenwriting pen sort of helped me decide what I thought was fun and cool in movies, because regardless of what critics or audiences thought back in the day, all of Daniel's movies for me are just a blast, and Batman Returns remains my personal favorite cinematic depiction of Batman in the whole thing. I mean, that movie, blew my mind, and it still does. And I can't believe that it exists. And it was great. I took my son to see it a couple of years ago on the big screen, and he was like 7 or something like that at the time. I think it was like 2 years ago, 2 Christmases ago. But no, it's without.
If I can get through to just one kid, that's not enough. But
But without those movies, we're a far lesser, richer cinematic world. So thank you for all the stuff that you've given us.
And I've one question about Ford Fairlane.
all right.
When who wrote the line, Ford, we just want to be held, and he goes, well, you got the bonus plan. That's my favorite line of the movie. He probably came up with that, right?
I like a lot of times I'd come up with a straight line, and then he'd come up with the zinger. Like I think I had a different response to that, but
it's the best line.
And then of course the woman storms out, and then he calls after her, "Do my dishes." So
God, after Heathers, I was interviewed by feminist magazines. They thought I was the great feminist white knight. blew that water right away.
Yeah.
Especially after
Just
the
like,
Gilbert scene.
Jesus.
Yeah, don't ask what we're working on next. The final question I had for you, Daniel, was you'd later go on to direct. Was there anything that sitting in the director's chair for the first time, did you think about anything any differently of like, oh, as a screenwriter, you maybe could have approached a director differently, or did you realize that
Don't
you know,
cheat
it
on the
really is
margins. Don't cheat on the margins. Don't cheat page count wise. Like it only,
Oh wow.
like I used to do all these fucking things to get my page count down, and like when you're the director, you're on the set like, oh great, you just fucked yourself. Like there's always Joe Silver always talks about lines. The Indians take the fort. Like the Indians take the fort. I got to shoot that. That's 9,000 shots. Like, and I put the Indians take the fort just to cut it down. Directing was not for me. Part of my writing process is taking naps, and apparently they don't let you do that during directing. So probably not my thing. But I think Sex and Death 101 is underrated. If Adam, who's wants to go see that,
He probably owns it because that's a New Line movie, right?
Well, it's an independent film that was picked up by Anchor Bay.
Oh, by Anchor Bay. Okay. Yes.
Dead silence.
No,
I'm kidding.
I got excited to see it. I thought New Line made it. Didn't New Line make it?
They threatened to.
Oh, okay.
Oh, New Line made my.
Which that's just as good.
New Line made my directorial debut, Happy Campers, which again, widely unregarded across the world.
I forgot about that one as well.
Yes, you and Earth.
Come on, Adam.
Talk
about how you both.
No, that's not. I'm teasing poor Adam.
So, Daniel, if we want to leave anybody with any parting thoughts, is there anywhere we can send people to? Are you on social media? Do you have any way that you like? Okay,
I'm all over social media.
Where can you be found there?
I'm on Facebook. I'm on Troubled Waters on X, and Birkin X7 Birkin 17X on Instagram. You can see my latest is I used to live in the house that Orson Welles died in, and I took a picture of David Lynch. David Lynch came to one of my parties, and I took a picture of him standing in the spot where Orson Welles died. So you got that image for you if you want it. It's out there on the internet. You go get it, folks.
Awesome.
Yeah, no, I would love to see that. And obviously, the time we're recording this, we only just lost David Lynch, and it's refreshing when everybody comes up and goes, some of these movies weren't as bad as we said they were, and obviously some of them truly great. And I was always my favorite thing about David Lynch. Die soon. Yes, thanks for reading through that.
Fairlaine was a classic.
That's what it's going to take for them to say it. They didn't say it when Gilbert died, but that's because he's a small part in it. So
because he made fun of the movie for years.
Yes,
it's true.
He did
because I killed him.
Yes. I did like how for years David Lynch would go on the internet every morning and give us the weather, and just straightforward presentation, non-ironic. When he stopped doing it, that's when I first started worrying about him, but he was with us for a while. Adam says, if Daniel gets a chance, I miss his top films of the year list because I'm not on social media, and he didn't do it this year on the movies that made us. Do you want to shout out one or two movies from 2024 since Adam was so kind to stick with us for the whole show?
Oh, geez. You just go on Facebook. You just go on there for a day and find the list.
It's not that hard.
It comes out January 1st on Facebook, and it's everywhere. Saw over 300 movies last year from I think the top was this Romanian film, Do Not Expect Too Much from the End of the World. The bottom was Borderlands by Eli Roth. But I like Eli Roth.
I saw that on an IMAX screen, Daniel.
Oh shit.
He's a masochist.
I want to make sure everybody saw the movie Strange Darling, the horror film, which I thought was great. And
still haven't seen it.
I did a pilot with Willa Fitzgerald, the star of Strange Darling, and it was such a good pilot, and she was amazing in it. It's one of the best performances given of my shit, and so I hope somehow it gets there out by accident. But until then, see Strange Darling.
Got to see it.
Yeah, I mean, definitely long before anyone sees Borderlands. You know, I can't recommend more that people stay away from that movie. You know, so yeah. But in any case, Daniel, I appreciate you taking the time, and
Thank you so much.
Thanks, bud.
Nick or Bill had any final thoughts before we wrap this thing up. But we do really appreciate it, and I wasn't joking. I will contact you about Hudson Hawk somewhere down the line. Another one that I would love to talk about. But and find him on social media. You can find me on social media at ChristianDMZ. And for those of you that are checking this from Grit and Script, please check out my podcast, the Bladtcast, Bladtcast. And if you're listening to that, check those guys out, including the Ejectables. And Bill, you always are so good at self-promotion. Tell people what they should do.
Check out the Ejectables, and then we have a YouTube movie trivia game show called Stump the Bill, where people try to stump me with movie trivia. We do that every Sunday. And a movie I worked on called The Good Side of Bad, available on Apple and Amazon. Awesome.
Yeah, I could not have been more terrible at stumping the bill, but people can check it out anyway. Well, we appreciate that. Thank you I want to say thank you to everyone in the chat, but I'm not going to lie. Mostly I want to thank Adam Rant, because there are other people in the chat. You're the one who's talking, Adam Rant 1138. So,
Adam Rant, all right, my man.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Adam.
And we appreciate Daniel Waters for taking the time to chat with us. And if you have any thoughts on the Adventures of Fort Fairlane, let us all know. And for both shows, we'll see you next time on the Bladtcast or wherever you might be listening to this. Bye, everybody.
Bye.